Mhm.
Welcome everyone to the Expat Woman Show. Today we actually had a little snafu with StreamYard, which is a platform I normally go live on. So we are recording it on Zoom, and I'm so appreciative of my guest, Monica Smith, for being so flexible and switching from StreamYard to Zoom. But that's the life of a live show host and their guest. But before I introduce my wonderful guest, my name is Naina Kaputi. I'm the founder and CEO of The Expat Woman and the host of The Expat Woman Show. And I'm delighted to introduce you to Monica Smith. She is the founder and CEO of Tradewinds Career Consulting. She's also a member of the Expat Woman membership, and she's a speaker at the upcoming The Expat Woman Audio Summit, and she's also a sponsor of the summit. So, she's involved with the Expat Woman and with her amazing coaching services in so many different ways. So I'm so appreciative of Monica for you to, with all your support that you've been giving us, and now having or participating on the show as my featured guest. I'm mumbling and rambling a little bit because I'm still recovering from, being, kicked off not kicked off, but having all those tech issues on the live stream. But I promise you, this is going to be a great interview. So, Monica, I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself and your wonderful expat journey, because I know you've lived and worked in many countries. So go ahead. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Nina, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm delighted to be here, and what an excellent organization you've got with the Expat Woman. Great membership as well. So my experience with being an expat is I've lived in many different countries in Europe. I've done a lot of travel, Asia, North Africa. I lived in India for 3 years. I set up a company in China. And I have to tell you, I add to that list, I've lived in multiple different regions in the United States. And that can be just as much as an adventure as some different countries.
That's awesome. And how many years have you been, I would call you a serial expat, right? Because you've lived, yeah, how many years were you, has this whole expat journey been for? Because now I'm assuming you're back in the US for good, maybe?
Yes, now I'm back in the US for the, undefined future. But I started traveling abroad in college. The first time I lived abroad was in Rome, Italy, and enjoyed that a great deal. And I lived in Austria. I had a Fulbright exchange program. After graduation, I was in Berlin, I was in Germany, and multiple places. And then my expat experience in India.
Wow, very cool. And, as you can guess from my accent and my name, I am from India. So it's always cool to meet a repat from India. Yeah. And so, this your topic is pretty interesting. And I was trying to think of what questions to ask you about, retaining your authenticity when you live abroad. So first of all, what made you decide on this topic? Because it's also the topic of this your presentation at the summit. And I obviously don't want you to reveal too much about what you're going to be. You can give us a teaser about what you'll be covering at the summit, but if you don't mind sharing a little bit about why did you decide on this topic? Why are you so passionate about it? What brought you to this whole understanding or this clarity on how important it is to be authentic when you live abroad?
Hmm. Well, what's interesting, Nina, it's partially my own experience and then the teams that I managed while I was an expat and other people that I worked with, realizing that being authentic to oneself is your grounding, is your way to remain happy. And it can be very overwhelming to be in a host culture, lovely and exciting and brilliant and vibrant, but it can be too much to come at you. So there's a mindset and a practice, and that we'll cover in more detail at the summit, about saying, I am who I am, and I'm adding and I'm modifying and I'm creating more of me. I'm never losing who I am. And then there's the activity of doing, learning, observing others, modifying and adjusting. But you can't let all of that adjusting change who you are, because you then become adrift And in some cases, as we learned early in the outsourcing world, those who were on the customer service lines who were told to adopt names and personalities from the culture of the company or the persons who were calling in, there's a lot of burnout trying to be someone you're not. So I believe for the long haul and for a more authentic and wholesome experience, remember who you are, you're adding to it. And that's the experience that I had in the teams that I managed, many of whom have gone on for international careers abroad. We talked about this a great deal. Never give up who you are, because then you can always come back to your center.
Beautiful. I love that. And I like that you gave that example about, mainly the call centers where you have to take on a different persona because, growing up in India, the call centers, when I was leaving India, call centers were caching, were just beginning to start, and where people had totally different names and they had to learn the accent and learn about the country. And then they usually got caught because, look, I've
Oh,
lived in the US for 22 years and I haven't picked up the American accent. It's not like I haven't tried because I want to be, that's where, being authentic is. I just feel people accept me for who I am. If you don't like my accent or you discriminate against me because you think, oh, she's from India or whatever, that's fine. But yeah, I'll be who I am. And sometimes I do wish I had the American accent when I'm in a big group of people and I don't want to stand out. I think it's when I don't want to stand out. Sometimes you just want to blend in. You don't want to be that one foreigner in this group. And I'm sure you face this same thing, in India. I mean, of course, it's like here it's easier to blend in because it's so multicultural. So if you have an American accent and you still look like you're from another country, it's fine because it's so global. I know in India it's a little harder because we're not so diverse. If you're white, you would stand out. But
I stood out, yes. And
yeah.
I had kind of had a dichotomy of experience, Nina, because in German-speaking countries, when people looked at me, they assumed I was Germanic, right? And they began speaking to me, and then they were annoyed if I didn't understand the rules about how I should have asked for the right postage for my letter. I should have
Wow.
known that, and so there was that kind of, jagged moment. Whereas,
Right.
no matter what I tried, people knew right away, she's not from here. But I got this bizarre additional level of deference because I was a guest from abroad. I
Mhm.
wasn't expected to do well at so many things that where I
Right.
actually perform. So it was a very interesting experience. And then, of course, I came as a single woman.
Mhm.
And at that time, I'm since married, but I came as a single woman. So how did I fit in socially? Woo, everyone my age was married and couples. So that was interesting. One of the funniest things that I learned in India, and it turned out to be true, I was negotiating large contracts on behalf of my company. And so I had to present appropriately in my leadership role. And I was told by an Indian colleague who was very kind, he said, you know what you need to do? You need to wear bigger jewelry. You need to impress people here. It is something people are looking for, is the jewelry that you've been given by my fabricated husband, apparently. But I need to present in this fashion. And you know what? It made a difference.
Wow.
It also helped me develop a new hobby. So
I didn't know that one. I mean, I wasn't much of a jewelry person in India, but maybe because you were a foreigner, so maybe they expected that, so you could, looks like you're blending into the culture. So my question was actually when you were talking about authenticity and finding who you are, but there are also people who may not have found their authentic selves before they moved abroad, right? Like I would say, even me, I was still trying to find myself. I didn't know who I was. Sometimes when you move to another country is when the scales fall off your eyes because you're trying to navigate a new culture and all the challenges. So what if you don't know who you really are, what your values are, who you stand for, your authenticity? What do you do in such a case?
that is a very difficult question. You're absolutely right. And it depends on your age group. So if you come with your family, and
Mm.
I coach many expats coming from other countries, and I expand that into supporting their family and their children, their third culture children. That's the term people like to use. They have to learn this way of saying, my family's values are my first set of values. And then when I hear something different at school or at sports or in piano lessons, I have to learn to ask the question. They don't know how to answer the question, but they have to learn to ask the question. Someone's asking me to do different things. What should I do? And in small children's cases, I always say bring it home to family. In children who are, in high school, that's harder. I still advise that as a first course of action, but they still have to say what makes me feel comfortable, what resonates with who I feel I am.
Right.
And adolescence is all about experimentation, etc. But ground yourself in that feels uncomfortable to me. There's no reason to push forward. Go back, consider. One of the things I do suggest is to keep a journal, right? And write it down and give yourself a moment or two to consider it and make that a practice.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic advice, and thanks for sharing that. And I think sometimes, you're not sure if you don't do what the culture is doing, that you're going to be disrespectful. So it's also that I feel it's, that it's a fine balance, right? Like do in Rome as the Romans do. So I think, and I wanted to ask you, with you, like, what are some of the challenges you faced when you moved to these different countries, especially when you were trying to be authentic, but at the same time you have to kind of assimilate maybe in some ways, so how do you balance that, being authentic and then being,
I think you take the mindset of how far do I want to try this? So in Austria, for example, there was a culture of fine wine and local wines and beers and apple cider, and people wanted to offer. Every grandmother in that small town wanted the American woman to eat her best cake. So it was always have some more of this. And then you realize, whoa, I've gone too far,
right,
and you pull it back. When I went to India, for example, no woman is ever required to drink, right? The pressure, it's just that pressure isn't there. And so
right.
that's lovely because it was like, I don't even have to, you can if you want, of course, but there's no pressure. Then I went to China negotiating some deals with a large real estate developer. And at a big dinner where all of his team, once he drank brotherhood with me, all of his underlings wanted to drink a shot of what I called fire water. I don't know what it was with him. So, that was a big pressure. So you have to say, okay, I'm going to put this in a frame. This is enough that I'm going to do. I will be gracious, but I won't do anything that's not natural to me.
So it's also like, guess, learning to say no and knowing what your boundaries are, right? With the Right,
Yeah.
because yeah, I think especially because I'm a people pleaser, so you want so much to fit in, you want to be like everyone else, you don't want them to think you're being offensive. For instance, recently I went to Japan on a vacation with my family, and I was reading, I joined the Facebook groups on for travelers to Japan, and people are saying you shouldn't wear shorts, you shouldn't wear sleeveless because there people cover up, they're very modest, but it was roasting hot. It was like almost 100 degrees, and I was like, no way can I dress like this. And so I did wear shorts, and I bought the shorts in Japan because I didn't. I was coming from India, and India, I never wear shorts outside. Things have changed, but I'm still don't like anyone looking at my legs, or you know what I mean. And again, I love India, but there's certain rules that I still follow in India because I just don't want to stand out. So yeah, I bought shorts in Japan, and but I had to be my authentic self because it was like I cannot handle the heat in long pants, and I'm not going to go into a temple with shorts, but when I'm going to the touristy spots, I will wear shorts. So I guess it's, I get totally what you're saying, and I think it's a fascinating topic. And so in your case, when you started being authentic, or you were already, I guess maybe were you already aware of this? Were you already thinking about, it's important to be authentic when I moved to a new country? Were you thinking about it? And whether you were thinking about it or you got the clarity there, how did it help you with navigating these different countries? Did it make the experience better? Did it make it harder? Would love to hear your thoughts and experiences and insights about that.
Well, I think it made the experience better,
Okay.
but I think it's because of the way I came up in the world, the way I was raised in my family. again, I'm number 5 out of 6 children.
Wow.
And my parents were very heavy on developing your character. So that came from an early age. And then when we moved as a family, we had those conversations about people here do this. That's not something we do, or this is something we do that might look different to people here. Let's be conscious about that. And so it was always a curiosity and respect for what is happening and who you are. And so I learned even that kind of limberness or suppleness in America. And then bringing that to other countries, I had to make sure that I never reacted super negatively or too harshly. I heard them, I thanked them, and I said, actually, my preference is this, right? So you have to develop a couple of phrases that give you time to catch your breath, to say, yes, actually, no. And in one country, I was frequently invited to people's homes, and they would say, wouldn't you like to go to the sauna? And I would say, I didn't bring a bathing suit, and they would just laugh. And I would say, yeah, I'm not going to the sauna. So, these are things that are just different for me. And I needed to find ways to give myself 1 or 2 sentences to say, thank you so much, but, or yes, and
Right.
just make everything smooth as possible. No one's feeling hurt, but I don't have to be anything I'm not.
I think that's a great response. And hopefully people listening will take notes that even if at work, maybe you move to a country, as you said, some countries you don't drink, and then some countries, after work you go out for happy hour, and maybe you're not comfortable being in a bar or drinking, and it's okay to say no. And that's what I like, at least, because I live in the US, so from a US perspective, that there's more and more focus on introducing cultures to an organization, with cross-cultural skills trainings and having employee resource groups highlighting different countries and festivities, and hopefully also training people on the American way of life. When you've been talking about all this, I've also been thinking my husband's family, his grandmother is Italian, and his paternal family is Italian, and his maternal family is Swiss French. And his grandmother, they grew up in New Jersey, and at that time being Italian was not cool. They were discriminated against. So they did his grandparents or grandmother, they did everything to become very Americanized. She changed her name, just try to fit in as much as possible. And I've seen in 2 generations, things have changed, not just for Italians, but for anyone, especially if you live in, I don't know what it's like in the smaller towns in the US, but in San Francisco, in New York, where I was earlier, you can embrace your culture and you can be who you are. And it's so different today. And so you can be very authentic. And whenever I see someone wearing an outfit from their country, like, I'm still very conscious about wearing like a sari in public. As I said, for me, I never wanted to stand out, not in India, not in the US, not anywhere in the world. I just want to fit in and blend in. But I just, admire them. And I think so it really is that you can hold on to your culture and still enjoy the country you live in. And again, your topic has got me thinking, because, when I know authenticity has become the kind of the buzzword, but it's more like the general authentic, be authentic on LinkedIn, be authentic when you make presentations. But this is a whole new level, because it's be
Yeah.
authentic in a new country. And I just want to keep an eye on the times, because I could go on talking about this. So I wanted to actually, before we go more into the authentic, because I do want to have you share some tips with people on what they can do, to be more authentic if they're struggling. But I wanted to go back a little bit with you, because I think it's really interesting that you worked in all these countries and then you started a business in China. So that is,
It wasn't my business. I did start my company's Fidelity Investments business in China.
wow.
Yeah, and what was very interesting there, and this is a whole course on its own, negotiating in India is completely different from negotiating in China to negotiating in the United States. So if you're creating a global footprint, understanding these nuances and how this conversation is going to go, and different surprises and different understandings of how the workforce demographics could play out impact your business. Very, very rich territory for discussion.
Right. No, I can imagine. And again, I guess authenticity comes in there because how much of it is like, I know in India you negotiate. I haven't negotiated in China, but I see there's such a difference between the US and India and how we do things in both countries. And at the same time, I guess as a business person, you want to hold on to that authenticity because in the end, people buy from people, right? So that
Right.
trust is so important that this person is, they're doing things a certain way, but I trust them because I know who the person is and they're not going to let me down. Yeah, no, I was just curious about this whole, you doing working in these different countries and again in the workplace, being authentic. How hard was it or how effective was it in dealing with people from these different countries, starting these businesses, dealing with your counterparts in the US? Would you mind sharing a little bit about that and what are some strategies that work for you being authentic in a workplace abroad?
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand what contribution are you making to your colleagues and on behalf of your firm. And it's not about me as a person, it's me as a role that I've been asked to perform. And we should be a large team, really literally team, not just a cluster of people. And how can we get that collaboration? And in my mind, if you want loyalty, if you want trust, you have to start by giving. And I also give honesty. So if I say these are the 6 principles and someone questions them, we have an open dialogue, we go back and forth. But if someone betrays the principles, then that's a whole different set of behaviors, also very authentic, which is you are not building the team, you're actually taking away from the team. So in my mind, making sure that you offer trust, offer open debate, you listen to other people's ideas, and then you stick to the principles you've already said. This is what needs to happen. That can be accommodated, or in fact, only 80% of that can be accommodated. I hear you. We can use this to benefit the firm, but not that. And there are always people on any side of a multinational table who are not interested in reaching across the table. My role is always about encouraging that behavior and requiring that as part of their performance.
Fantastic. I mean that is really valuable and I think so important and things people forget about. Because I think also when trying to navigate a new culture and a new company, a new country, you get so lost in the shuffle and the lost in translation literally that
Yeah.
these things that matter fall by the wayside. So thanks for sharing that. So let's now have you to share some tips and strategies for people who are also trying to find their authentic self, like who am I really? I've just moved to this new country. I'm trying to discover, or maybe I've lived in this country for 10 years or 20 years or 5 years, and I'm so like, maybe a multicultural or maybe just moved to one country, but you're so mixed up right now, right? Was Naina, the Indian Naina, who's the American Naina? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
so how do you find that authentic self? And then when you do, how do you stay authentic? What are some strategies people can implement to make things easier for them?
Yeah. And there are lots of people asking this question. So this is good. I think taking an intentional approach, deciding, okay, I want to sit down. I'm doing too many different things, or I'm being too many different people to do many different groups. What is important to me? Get my priorities clear, principles and priorities. And then decide some goals you'd like to approach. So when I went to India, for example, I made sure that I pursued 2 or 3 hobbies outside of the workplace. I wanted to meet people who were not my colleagues in the workplace. So I had yoga, I played tennis, and I traveled, right? So you have to clear the cache every once in a while and come back fresh. So set some goals of what do you want to do outside of the workplace or the specific group that you are going to be anchored in. Then again, planfully say, I want to monitor, am I playing the tennis and I'm really improving and I'm meeting other people? Am I enjoying that? If
Mm.
not, stop.
Mm.
If do something else, right? There's only so much time in the day. So don't do it if it's not bringing you more joy. And balancing you. Again, it's resilience that you're building. It's not any particular accomplishment in that space. And again, keeping a journal is super helpful because you can look back and you can say to yourself on any given Tuesday, I don't believe I've made any progress. I've been here 3 months. And then you go back and you look at your points made 3 months ago and you're like, no, actually, yeah, I'm way up the mountain already. I get it. I need to not be harsh on myself. I need to look back and encourage myself who's made progress and will continue to make progress. So I think always thinking about being, not the doing. Make sure you're checking in with who you are and whatever activities you are doing, are they helping yourself, who you are, who you're being? If that's
Beautiful.
too abstract.
No, it isn't. I think that, and I think the thing with the journaling too, because you forget, right, that that your progress sometimes it feels like you've not achieved anything, and I think I would also add celebrating those little wins because, right, because then it feels like yeah, it I have made progress, and maybe I'm going to go take an afternoon off and get a spa or go for a walk in a beautiful park or buy some ice cream and watch, binge Netflix, whatever. Yeah,
You're fancy. But the
Yeah,
important thing is to catch yourself if you are criticizing.
right.
Catch that because that negative self-talk does you no good. It isn't winning. It isn't fixing or protecting you. Look at what habits are protecting you and helping you, and catch yourself when you're doing habits that don't help you.
Beautiful. Yes. Very important. And I like what you said about being intentional too, because again, it comes back to the people pleasing and not being authentic, right? Where you just, maybe there are people you hang out with and you don't feel accepted in that group, but you're so desperate to find friends in a new country, but you come away, and that happened to me. I just wanted to be part of like a group in one of the neighborhoods we lived in. And then I realized every time I came back from a get together, I didn't feel like my soul had been fed. I felt
Right.
right. I felt down.
Yes.
I didn't feel complete. I would have been better off not going because then I came back and after a while I was like, I don't need that. I maybe better to just be with myself or, instead. So I think that's so important about being intentional and not, because people say find friends, get a job, do, even a job if it makes you so unhappy.
Right.
Yeah, and it doesn't you're not being your authentic, that doesn't let you be the authentic person you want to be or goes against your values. And again, I know that's hard because sometimes you need the job to stay in the country financially. So actually, I would ask you that question. What happens in such a case where you do get stuck in a situation like that where you have, if you leave it, you don't get to stay in the country or you financially it's going to affect you. So, what would you do in such a case?
I think that's a really great question because expats feel like I have to stay for the period of time, even if I hate this job and my manager and I are not getting along or things aren't happening. I think what I did not have, and I wish I had, was actually a coach who is my trusted ally. I had a couple of friends, but you can't wear them out, right? You can't keep going. And to order to build your own path, to have a coach, which is really why this is my passion, is that I know what it's like to not have that. And it is really so beneficial. And it is about having the person asking the right questions, listening, and having the coachee come to their realizations and say, okay, because they come out of that session refreshed, exactly what you're describing. You didn't get from the wrong friends, wrong groups. But if they feel refreshed, their powers are back, their resiliency is back, and who they are is worth making tough choices for. And so they could decide, you know what I need to do? I need to partner with someone in the office around this objective or this initiative I'm working on. And in my mind, start handing it off to them because I'm leaving. And remind yourself, I'm leaving. Build the team and I will go. And it takes that emotional pressure off of you. Even if it has to last 3-4 months, at least okay, I'm preparing for the departure that I have decided I want.
Great. And this is such a great segue into asking you what led you to start your own consulting business because you were working in the corporate world. So when did you have that aha moment? When did you decide I'm leaving? I'm starting my business, and what do you do? Who do you help? Would love to learn more about that.
Okay, well, thank you. My evolution was never linear. So everyone should feel confident. It doesn't have to be linear. I left one job and I said, I'm going to get a master's in global diplomacy. I did that. I met a whole different cohort of people. Fascinating world. I did charity in India. I'm sorry, in Kenya with a friend of mine who had started schools for the blind, teaching them technical skills. A fantastic endeavor, and I was able to be part of it. It wasn't my journey, but I was able to accompany on her journey. Beautiful experience for me. Then I went back to work. I did consulting. I went back and set up, I wanted to, there were a couple of things I still wanted to do in corporate. I wanted to do board level work. I wanted to do governance work. And I did that. I accomplished that at another job. And then I said, really, I'm done. So I decided at that point, what was my common thread? I did some work thinking, what was the common thread of my joy of work? What really brought me satisfaction? And it was helping people develop themselves, helping teams become successful in accomplishing and getting to the next level, getting promoted. Even if they didn't stay in my team, I could have them in another group. I would still work with them. And so I realized developing people or helping people get themselves developed in the right direction was my passion. So I said, I like to do team building. Reigniting teams is a big theme these days because hybrid, return to work, all of these questions, everything's so fractured. How to create a fabric there. And then for me, always the spice of a global dimension to it. And so for me, that keeps me motivated. So I work with expats, as I said, from 6 continents, no one from Antarctica yet.
Wow.
And I don't envision that happening. I do some consulting to think about how do I do globalization? How do I bring my team together? I work with some industry groups now who want to talk about how do we reinvigorate the globalization model, because there's a politicization happening out there about that. How do they want to continue to keep that vibrant in their world? And then I do coaching directly for anyone who's a team lead, individual contributor up to C-suite, to say, how do I keep myself fresh as the trade winds? The reason the name is Tradewinds is the trade's going to come and go. It's going out, it's coming in, insourcing, outsourcing. But how do I keep propelling myself forward in a healthy way in a global world? And that's how it came about.
Fantastic. And I was wondering about the name. So that's a lovely name to give a organization, a very, very powerful. And how do these people find you? How do your clients find you?
My website, which is www.tradewindscareerconsulting.com, it's actually currently being refurbished. So the best way to reach out is contact@tradewindscareerconsulting.com. And that's the email associated with the website. The website will be relaunched soon, and I can't wait to show you.
Very cool. And maybe, because I'm going to upload this video onto YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So you can then share that, in the comments as well, how people can get in touch with you. If the website, you can even say website coming soon and share that link. And before we go, I wanted to ask you what you enjoy about being a member of the Expat Woman membership. You're a fairly new member, but you've been pretty active. And of course, you've come on board as a speaker for the summit, which we'll talk about in a second.
Well, what's wonderful is the membership is just a beautiful mix of people. There's so much positive energy. There's so much excitement about endeavoring and trying different things. And any partnership amongst the conversation or even doing work together is very vibrant. It's a wonderful group, and I couldn't be happier.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you are going to be a speaker. You're a sponsor of the summit, which is, thank you so much for your support. So do you want to briefly share the title of your topic and what people will learn when they listen to you on October 9th at the Audio Summit?
Yes, it is the topic which we explored briefly here, which is how to work in another culture while remaining authentic to yourself. Balance, resilience, suppleness, flexibility, and how to feel good about it and love it. And you'll learn some takeaways that you can start doing right away, but it's also very sustainable work. So it's mindset practice, win right away and continue winning.
Beautiful. I can't wait to share this with our audience who's listening here today. So the Expat Women Audio Summit is on October 9th. It's audio only. And because of all these technical issues we have, it's pre-recorded. So you all you would need to do is you'd receive the link on that day and then you just listen to the private podcast. You can have it available to you for 24 hours. So you can listen to Monica as many times as you want and the other speakers. We're total of 13 speakers, all expat coaches like Monica and me. Because besides running the Expat Woman, I'm also a LinkedIn coach. I actually have my LinkedIn virtual background on. I wanted to have the Audio Summit background. But Monica, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure. Thanks for your flexibility and, on jumping from StreamYard to Zoom. And I so enjoyed our conversation, and I'm excited to have you as a speaker.
Thank you, Nana. It was lovely to be with you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.